Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I am kind of in the process of filming a bunch of end of the year videos. I've been filming videos on makeup products that I love, makeup products that I don't like. I got a comment from one of you guys. I wish I took a screenshot. I might have. There might be one on my computer, but if not, I'll try to find the comment and put it on the screen because I appreciate this suggestion. But you suggested filming a video on makeup I'm glad I didn't buy in 2019. I thought this was a fun idea, so I wanted to film it for you guys. There are a couple of people here on YouTube that I love that film videos like this. Samantha March does videos on products I don't regret not buying, and then Kelly Gooch films videos about makeup she's glad she didn't buy as well. So I'll link their channels below. I love both of them so much. I'm sure there might be other people who film videos like this, so if there are, I'll link them in the description box. But I thought in today's video I would talk about palettes I'm glad I didn't buy. There were a couple of products other than palettes that I'm glad I didn't buy, but there were mainly palettes as I was writing my list. So I have 10 different palettes to share with you guys, eyeshadow palettes and face palettes. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I would love to hear from you. If there are any products that you are glad that you skipped over, let me know and let's jump into it. Okay, so I finally purchased my very first Melt Cosmetics palette. I'm actually wearing it today for the very first time. So I will have a video up on my channel using it, reviewing it at some point, but I'm obviously still kind of in the testing phase. You guys, how beautiful is this palette? It is one of the prettiest palettes that I've ever seen. And when I saw this palette, I knew that it was the one for me. I've been talking about Melt Cosmetics so much on my channel in 2019 because I've told you guys that I've wanted to try the brand, but I wasn't sure like which palette to start with. I'm so glad that I waited because this palette is perfect. The color story is amazing and I like it so much better than any of the other palettes that I was considering in 2019. So the first one that I was considering near the beginning of the year was the Melt Cosmetics Blueprint stack. This retails for $48 and I think that this stack is absolutely gorgeous. It was released right when I was super into blue eyeshadow, and this, does have blue eyeshadow. I do like blue eyeshadow, but I was kind of going through this phase where I just wanted like a blue palette, and when they were teasing photos and swatches of this on their Instagram, I just thought there were so many gorgeous blue shades, and then they released a photo of the entire thing and revealed that half of it was neutral. I figured for $48 I better skip over it because I have so many staple neutrals and I don't know, I felt like it just wasn't the one for me. And I'm glad that I waited because eventually ColourPop released their Blue Moon palette, which comes with 9 blue shadows. It's $12, and that definitely like satisfied my need for an all blue palette. Another stack that I almost purchased is the Shape Shift stack, also from Melt Cosmetics. This one retails for $48, and it comes with 4 duochrome or like iridescent shadows, which are just so stunning. Again, I kind of got pulled in by this one on Instagram. Melt Cosmetics does such a good job on their Instagram because they feature so many different looks and everything that they feature is so stunning. I think they do a really good job. So typically when I'm looking through their products, I'm always pulled in, and I thought about grabbing this one, but in the end, I saw like a couple of Instagram posts or YouTube videos where people were duping this with existing shadows in their collection, and I decided to do the same, and I realized that I do have a lot of very similar shades, especially in like my ColourPop shadows. I also remember talking about this in a purchase or pass video, and a lot of you guys were like, well, it's $48 for 4 shadows, and as good as I've heard Melt Cosmetics quality is, I wasn't sure that I wanted to spend $12 per shadow. It just wasn't something that I felt like I needed, and I was able to kind of dupe it within my own makeup collection. So I'm glad that I did not buy that one. As beautiful as it is, and I'm sure that I would enjoy it, I definitely have other shadows like that. So I did purchase a few Anastasia palettes in 2019, but there are a few that I did not purchase. I didn't actually end up buying the Anastasia Beverly Hills Alyssa Edwards palette. At that point, like when they released this one, I think it was May or June, I had just purchased the Anastasia Riviera palette, and I saw a couple of comparisons on Instagram where people swatched them next to each other, and I felt like they just had a very similar vibe. There are a few shades between the two that I feel like are almost exact dupes, some that are just similar, but overall, I didn't feel like I needed to have both of them in my collection. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, and what's a little bit frustrating to me is that I don't wear the Riviera palette as much as I thought I would. There are colors in there that I love, but sometimes when it comes to like half neutral, half colorful palettes, it doesn't become one of my go-to neutral palettes and it doesn't become one of my go-to colorful palettes, so it almost gets ignored, and I feel like that's what happened with the Riviera palette, and I'm sure it would be the same case with the Alyssa Edwards palette. So I am glad that I didn't buy that one, not because I don't think it wouldn't be great, just because I don't think I would get as much use out of it as I would have hoped. As we all know, Anastasia did release the Norvina Pro Pigment palettes this year. So there are 3 different palettes. They have 25 different shades in each one. And when they dropped the Volume 1 palette, I was really tempted to buy it. I love pinks and purples, and I just thought it was really beautiful. I wasn't sure, you know, at that point, I didn't know they were going to release like 2 other palettes and even more palettes after that, and I just thought it was really pretty. And then I heard a lot of great things about the actual quality of the palette, so I was tempted to buy that one, but I'm glad that I didn't because, again, like this is something that I knew about myself before 2019, but something that I've definitely solidified. I am just not the biggest fan of super large palettes. I think that I find them very overwhelming because I don't know what to do with them. I feel like there are so many options that I'm not even sure where to start. And it's so weird to me because a lot of times when I do my eyeshadow, I'll pull out like 3 palettes and reach for a bunch of shades. But when it comes to a really large palette, it like stops me. I don't know what to do. The other thing about these Anastasia palettes is that the shades are all over the place. I like things laid out in a more like organized order, like something that makes sense in my mind. Like I want all of the greens together, all of the purples together, all of the pinks together. When they're like all over the place, my eyes are just looking everywhere. So I'm glad that I didn't buy them because I just think that I wouldn't have gotten enough use out of them to justify the $60 price tag. So ColourPop released so many palettes in 2019, and obviously I wasn't able to buy all of them. I'm really glad that I put my 1 palette per month rule into place last year or this past year, because I think when it comes to a brand like ColourPop, like they release palettes that are just so eye-catching, so beautiful. They make my favorite formula, so I would be tempted to buy all of them. And if I did, I'd have like 50 palettes just from ColourPop, and there's no way that I would be able to show love to all of them. There's no way I need that many. In fact, last year in 2018, I purchased like all of their palettes, and they didn't even release a fraction of how many they released in 2019, and it just felt overwhelming. It got out of hand. So I'm really glad that I put that guideline into place for myself because it stopped me from buying a lot of ColourPop palettes. That being said, there aren't a lot that I would say I'm glad I didn't buy because I think I would be happy with the majority of them, but there are a couple that stood out to me. So the first one is the Zoella Brunch Date palette. This was actually a really cute collection. I thought the packaging was adorable, but the shades in the palette are shades that I have a million times over in all of my ColourPop palettes. To me, it's not really even like an eye-catching neutral palette. The thing that really catches my eye is the packaging, but as for the actual shadows, it's a pretty understated neutral palette with the exception of like the pop of blue. And I know a lot of brands were doing like the pop of blue for a while, but I think at this point, you know, I have blue shadow, so that doesn't really appeal to me. But out of all of the ColourPop palettes, this is one that I don't think I necessarily would have fallen in love with if I did end up purchasing it. So I'm glad that I didn't buy that one. The other palette that I'm glad that I didn't buy is probably the Strawberry Shake palette. I think it's really pretty, and I think they kind of released it in like the middle of their monochromatic palette series. And at that point, like every time they released one, I wanted it. Like I wanted to go on the website and purchase it right away because I love that series. I think it's one of my favorite like palette series releases of all time. I just enjoy every single one of the ones that I purchased. But you know, how many pink eyeshadow palettes do I need? I have to say that I don't wear pink as much as I used to. And when I do wear pink, it's either like a really bold, intense pink, or it's more of like a toned down mauvey purple pink. It's not as much like the pink and red tones in this palette. And I did get the Watermelon palette, which feels like a more bold version of this palette, and I don't know, I think that one combined with other palettes that I have are pretty close to this one. So I'm glad that I didn't purchase this just because, again, I don't think I need it. I don't think I would have gotten a ton of use out of it, but I just wanted to share that. Okay, so let me touch on a couple of like face or cheek palettes that I'm glad that I did not buy this year. I really thought about buying the Natasha Denona Tan Bronze and Glow palette because I loved the Natasha Denona Bloom Blush and Glow palette so much, and I think they released this one like shortly after they released the blush palette. But this is a palette with 2 cream bronzing products, 1 powder bronzer, and 1 powder highlighter. I've actually heard really great things about this, but I don't wear cream cheek products as much as I would like to think that I do. I wear them on occasion, and I have some that I love, but it's not a regular occurrence for me, even less so when it comes to bronzers. I'm so picky about bronzers. There are really only like 2 or 3 bronzers that I reach for on a regular basis, and none of them are creams. So I don't think I would have really used the creams in here a whole lot if at all, to be honest with you guys. And I think that this is a stunning palette, but you know, I just found that I didn't need it. I was trying to justify it by saying $55 for 4 products isn't a bad deal, especially because it's Natasha Denona, but in the end, it doesn't matter because if I spent $55 and I got a good deal because I got 4 products, but I didn't use them, I wasn't getting a good deal anyways because they were going to waste in my collection. So I'm glad that I didn't buy that one. I just don't think I would have ended up using it very much. I'm kind of surprised at myself that I did consider this release from Charlotte Tilbury because it's expensive, but Charlotte Tilbury released 2 different Glowgasm face palettes for $75. She had a lighter one and a darker one, and they're just so beautiful. They both come with really beautiful, like gorgeous glowy blushes, bronzers, and highlighters in them. I love glowy or shimmery cheek products, and everything about this palette, like the actual products, the packaging, definitely caught my eye. So I guess I can see why I did consider them, but when I think about the $75 price tag, I'm glad that I didn't buy this because that just brings me back down to reality and reminds me that I don't need to buy a $75 cheek palette no matter how pretty it is. When it comes to cheek palettes or like face palettes, there's always a possibility for me that I won't end up using or loving at least 1 or 2 of the products. I rarely buy a cheek palette that has multiple products in it and fall in love like head over heels with every single product in it. Typically there are like 1 or 2 that I just don't end up loving, and for $75, like that's a lot to take a chance on. The $55 Bloom Blush and Glow palette was a little bit more doable for me, but $75, I'm glad that I didn't do it. I'm surprised that I considered it for a second because that's just a lot. I actually have 2 more eyeshadow palettes to share with you guys. So I'm always excited to see what palettes Dominique Cosmetics is going to create because I love the formula. And I've told you guys multiple times that I've been wanting to try out more from the brand. In January, I purchased the Berries and Cream palette, and then I got like a mini version of her Celestial Storm palette in my BoxyCharm for November, and I have not been disappointed at all in the quality. I didn't end up purchasing Rustic Glam, but I did think about this one for a second because it is pretty. Like sometimes with Dominique Cosmetics palettes, I like the color stories, but I also feel like they're a little bit all over the place. So I think that's why I'm not typically pulled in right away when I see one of their new palettes. When I look at the colors of this palette individually, I think they're gorgeous and I would be able to create a lot of different looks, but when I look at them as a whole, and maybe it's like the blue background on the palette, I don't know, it just kind of seems a little bit random, a little bit all over the place. And like I said earlier, when that happens, like sometimes I don't end up reaching for that palette a whole lot, no matter how much I like the quality. I even find that I don't reach for Berries and Cream as much as I would like to, and I do think that is more of a cohesive palette, but sometimes I think her palettes in particular are just, like it's hard for me to form a complete look in my mind. Anyways, I am glad that I waited because after Rustic Glam, she released Celestial Storm, which I did almost purchase, and then a few of you guys told me we were getting like a mini version of that in our BoxyCharm boxes, which we did. So I'm glad that we got that. If we didn't get that, I think that I would have ended up purchasing her Celestial Storm. Is it Celestial Storm or Celestial Thunder? The full-size version is called Celestial Storm, but they did like a mini version called Celestial Thunder. So I probably would have purchased Celestial Storm at some point if we didn't get Celestial Thunder, but I'm glad we did because I've been loving it. So I am glad that I skipped over Rustic Glam. I just don't think I would have fallen in love with it just because it's a little bit all over the place. So for April Fools of 2018, Tarte released this palette. I'll put a picture on the screen for you guys. And a lot of people didn't think it was a joke. They actually loved it. And what's funny is that in 2018, like green and blue palettes weren't the norm. A lot of people were wanting more colorful palettes because everybody was doing neutrals, like warm toned neutrals. And in 2019, a lot of brands did gorgeous green, blue, cooler toned, colorful palettes. But Tarte, they actually teased that they were going to release this, and then it took them forever. It took them an entire year to release this, and it wasn't even the exact palette that they, shared as their April Fool's joke. It was like a less exciting version of the palette. I think if they released the original palette in that packaging, that exact color layout, people would have still purchased it even though it was a year later. But because they changed up the palette and it just didn't look the same, and at that point, brands were starting to release more colorful palettes, I just think it was it was a fail. I understand that it takes time to create products and manufacture them, but Tarte tends to be a little bit slow. All I know is that I'm glad that I didn't buy that palette because a lot of other brands did greens and blues that I love. So those are all of the palettes that I am glad that I did not purchase in 2019. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you want to see a video on other makeup products I'm glad I didn't buy that aren't necessarily palettes, let me know and I can film a part 2, but again, I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comment section below which products you're glad you guys did not buy, and I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.